Welcome, listeners, to another episode of Good Crick Talk with myself, Ben Browning, here in San Francisco, and my dad in Geelong, Australia. We're here to talk about Test cricket. Again, there's not a lot going on right now, but we've delved into some of our Test cricket memories this week, and we're going to talk about some great innings that we've seen over the years. And there's also a bit of first-class cricket action to talk about. The Sheffield Shield final just wrapped up and the start of the English County Championship. How's it going, Dad?
It's very good, thank you, Ben. Chilly mornings in Geelong now. You're starting to improve. We've moved our clocks back. I presume you've moved yours forward.
Yeah, it's getting a little... it's a little more difficult in this season to synchronise with Australia, but it isn't too bad, really. It's about 5 p.m. here and about 10 a.m. there?
3 a.m. here.
Oh, yeah.
No. 9:49 a.m. it tells me on the computer.
Right.
So everything's fine. It's a pleasant morning. April, you get some lovely days in April in Victoria, as you might remember when you lived here.
Yes. April. They call it an Indian summer, I guess. But speaking of Victoria, I guess we can talk a little about their success in the Sheffield Shield. Another Sheffield Shield is racking them up now, Victoria. A convincing performance against New South Wales, and I believe you were actually able to see at least a day of that. What were your thoughts on the game, and who were the standout performers?
Well, my thoughts are all positive about the whole experience. I went to 2 days, the first 2 days of the Shield final, and saw some fantastic cricket from Victoria and a little bit of good cricket from New South Wales. It's a little bit hard to judge the absolute merits of both sides because at the same time Australia were playing some, I think personally, fairly meaningless one-dayers in the UAE that were probably for pay TV. I don't see that they've got much relevance to the World Cup. But anyway, Victoria had been the best side all year in all competitions in domestic cricket, and they certainly asserted themselves beautifully at the Junction Oval, winning the game by a significant margin. I saw Marcus Harris get 141 on the first day out of 289 for Victoria, and then James Pattinson only took 3 wickets in the New South Wales first innings, but he was certainly the one that seemed to break the spirit of the New South Wales batsmen, and then Peter Siddle mopped up. So that gave Victoria a significant first innings lead, and they went on to win quite comfortably in the end. 4 out of 5 Shield wins for Victoria over the recent years. A feather in the cap of the team and the coaching staff, and of recent times, particularly Andrew McDonald, who Michael Vaughan has said should be considered for Trevor Bayliss' job once Bayliss resigns at the end of the upcoming English summer.
Yeah, speaking of Marcus Harris, you would think a commanding performance in the Shield final, a game that was played with the Duke's ball as well. We should mention that, not the traditional Australian kookaburra. You'd think, his batting performance would surely cement his spot in the Test side for the first Test against the English side. Your thoughts on that?
Yes, I agree 100% with what you're saying. The selectors have got big conundrums with how to sort out the batting order, with Smith and Warner returning, Khawaja making runs at the top of the order in the one-dayers, and then Harris doing so well, and Bancroft being available again. The only thing I would say for sure is that I believe Harris should be selected before Bancroft. Nothing against Cameron Bancroft, but I just think he's done enough to merit his inclusion in front. The day that he batted was a beautiful day at the Junction Oval. They've done a great job to set up that ground as the boutique Melbourne cricket ground. It's certainly, you couldn't call the MCG a boutique ground, so they've got their boutique ground down at St Kilda. It looks lovely, and it was a lovely day, lovely mid-autumn day, and he batted superbly. He has that distinctive get down on the knees square drive, which got him into a little bit of trouble in the test matches, and I'm still a little bit concerned about how Stuart Broad and Jimmy Anderson might view that and how they might set his field. But he certainly plays it with some aplomb at domestic level and had a brilliant domestic season. He and Wade were the standouts. If runs count and being in a winning side and stamping your authority on a winning side counts, then he certainly should be in the Ashes squad.
Cameron White, now how many Shield finals has he won now? Is it 5 or 6 perhaps?
Yes, presumably his last game for Victoria. A magnificent servant for Victoria as captain and player, because he started off as a batting all-rounder bowling leg spin, but his leg spin, a bit like Steve Smith, fell by the wayside. Only had the 4 test matches, which he played in India in 2008. A lot more T20s and one-dayers for Australia. Probably a bit unlucky only to play those 4 games. The feeling would be that if it was from New South Wales, he might have played 5, 10 times that amount of test matches. But Australia's loss has been Victoria's gain, and he's been, as I say, he's been a fantastic servant of Victorian cricket. Probably finished great slips fieldsman too, which might have been an asset at test level as well.
Now, Victoria's dominance in Shield cricket at the moment, it wasn't always that way, and I actually have memories of Victoria winning the Shield final in 1991, I believe, the 1990-91 season, when Jamie Siddons and Darren Lehman played for Victoria. Was that, am I right in my recollection that was something of a drought-breaking victory, that Shield final win back then?
Yes, it was. It had been over a decade. They'd won in 78, 79 and 79, 80. And then they won in 1991. Our distant relative Wayne Phillips, of course, also with Jamie Siddons, played fantastic last day innings. And they didn't win again until 2003.
Right, so there was
or 2003-04.
So they won about 1 in about 23 seasons, and they've won quite a few of late.
Yeah, so catching up to New South Wales, who still are well in front with, I think, 45 wins. I think Victoria's now up to 32.
Okay, well, they've definitely... it does seem as though Australia's selection policy somewhat reflects a little bit more these days Victoria's dominance. They were pretty reluctant to pick a Victorian batsman over the last 20 or 30 years. You can probably name Matthew Elliott, Dean Jones, Brad Hodge, who really didn't get that many tests, probably another guy who deserved to play a lot more test cricket. But they've tried a few more of late. Obviously Hanscom and Harris, although technically he's originally from WA, he plays Victoria, and the ODI side at the moment has Aaron Finch and Hanscom and Maxwell all batting in the top 4, I think, or top 4 or 5. So they're starting to be a little more represented, and maybe that's a fair reflection of their dominance at the domestic level.
Well, there's a lot more movement of players around the country now, from state to state. And, of course, Chris Rogers 6 years ago, was rewarded, I think partly because the Australian side was so lacking in stability at the top of the order. They'd just come out of the homework gate tour of India, and he got back in the side. He's played all his formative cricket, and he picked for his first test when he was playing for Western Australia. But he certainly, when he came to Victoria, his career kicked on. Harris has done the same. And possibly Nick Maddinson, who was in the cricketing wilderness 12 months ago, was injured, unfortunately, and couldn't play in the Shield final. But in the games that he did play for Victoria, did splendidly, 300s in 3 games, I think. So there's a few guys that seem to relish the Victorian environment, which, again, is credit to the way that the teams run and the guys like Shippard and McDonald who've coached it.
Yeah, all good points. The other first-class cricket we wanted to mention was the start of the English county cricket season, county championship, is that as it's known, I believe?
Now, Crick Talk friend Dennis Kuhn calls it the Champo, which I've never heard before, but if he wants to call it that, good luck to him. I like the English county championship. I certainly like it a lot more than that little tournament that's going on, that tiny little forgettable tournament in India at the moment. and always stunning weather in April for the start of the county championship. You and I witnessed that opening day of county cricket season at Chelmsford in 1991, Ben.
Yeah, there's been reports of a game in England where they couldn't tell who was playing. There was just a whole lot of cricket sweaters running around, layer upon layer upon layer. But I didn't really see much of the scores from the opening games. I did see that Yorkshire played against Nottinghamshire, which is a fairly well test player represented game, with Broad playing for Nottinghamshire and Root and Gary Balance playing for Yorkshire and a few others. It seems that Joe Root played a match-saving innings, making 100 to get a draw for Yorkshire in that game.
Yes, I did watch a bit of that game. These days you're able to watch a live stream of the county championship from several counties, not all of them, and get BBC commentary synchronised with it. And so I watched a bit of that game from Trent Bridge, first session, and Stuart Broad hit Joe Root in the head with a bouncer first ball. But he shook off the effects of it and went to get 100, which, maybe is something he needed, because he's been getting a lot of 50s and getting out, as we mentioned, I think, a couple of weeks ago. And he's gone on and got 100 to dig his side out of trouble. They were in trouble at 2 for 24 or 24 for 2 early on the last day. So that's a good result. And Gary Balance batted through with him. Adam Wyeth was playing for Yorkshire as well, but I don't think we'll see either of those guys in the Ashes series. They've had their chances and didn't really take them.
Never say never, I guess.
I also watched a bit of... You can actually, of course, in this day and age, you can have two screens going at once, and I watched a bit of Somerset versus Kent. Somerset, a really interesting side. This game was down at Taunton, and the first day was washed out. Kent looked like they had the winning of the game at the start of the last day, and in fact, when the ninth Somerset wicket fell, they were only 140 odd in front. The last wicket pair put on 60, and then by lunch, Kent in their second innings chasing 206 were 5 down already, and eventually bowled out for 130. Somerset have been a really strong, consistent club over recent years, but they have never, in a history of, I think it must be getting close to 130 years, ever won the county championship, which is pretty bizarre considering how many times they've started out. And of course, in the last decade, they've got within a whisker twice of winning it, only to be picked on the last day of the long county season. I think the first time by Nottinghamshire and the second time by Middlesex. But that was a really good win for Somerset. Still got Marcus Trescothick out there trotting around. Again, I don't think we'll see him play in the Ashes series. Somerset's cap is maroon. His looks a faded grey. He's had it that long.
Now, did Viv Richards play for Somerset?
Most of his county career he did. He played a little bit at Glamorgan at the end.
Yeah.
But for a long time for Somerset. And Botham and Garner and Martin Crowe and Steve Waugh. The famous old club. Tucked away right down there in Taunton. Lovely little ground. Usually run saturated. This recent game wasn't. But yeah, no wins. I think part of the problem they've got is being in the sort of southwest corner of the country. Although it's not colder than the rest of the country, they tend to be the first ones to receive any bands of rain coming through, so they probably lose a bit more time. I've seen ducks on the outfield there. When it rains properly in England, it rains even more properly in Somerset. The same rain they get the same rain probably that hits south of Ireland, I think.
The other thing we forgot to mention, I guess, was that Dwayne Olivier played for Yorkshire in that game against Nottinghamshire, and of course he's given up his international career to play exclusively in England. I think he may have even mentioned that he would like to qualify for England one day. I guess he's young enough that he potentially could be a multi team test player. Hasn't been too many of those over the years. I guess Kepler Wessels is the most famous one. But yeah, keep an eye on his career as we go along there. A
lot of water to flow under the bridge, and he'll have to wait some time before he's available. And they've got England have got to think that he's a better bet than some of the guys that are their own products, really. But England do tend to like those sort of left of or outside the square selections. They've done that before, so certainly down the track it could happen.
Are you suggesting that England have picked players that have been born overseas before?
I'm not sure the exact numbers, but there might be. I've got a hunch there might be one or two.
Yeah. There's been a few. Quite a few from South Africa, but the odd Australian and the odd Kiwi as well.
No way! David Warner goes! And a way that we've seen him go before, by the way. Root's tactics have worked brilliantly. A fabulous innings come to an end, and everybody around the MCG has let out a groan of disgust. They're checking the front foot. Let's see. It's tight. What?
I guess this is a good time now to delve into our memory pot.
All right. Well, last time we had the most exciting single moments that you and I have witnessed, and thanks to Andrew Walker for chipping in his comment about Warnie's 700th. This time we're going to list our top ever innings that we've witnessed live.
Top 5.
We don't have to have seen the whole lot. Top 5, top 10. we don't have to have witnessed the whole innings, as long as we've seen a decent section of it. Again, though, there must be innings that we've seen. I found this much more difficult than finding the top 5 moments, because I guess it shows how much Test cricket I've watched. There are a lot more great players.
You found it difficult narrowing it down, is what you're trying to say?
Yes. There's plenty of guys who could have made a case for it, and I've had to leave out some top players, top batsmen who've played great innings. So can I start off, Ben? And again, we invite anyone who might be listening to this podcast to contribute their comments. But can I list the guys that missed out? I'll just say I won't comment on the innings. I'll just say what they were and who they were, if that's all right, very quickly.
The runners-up.
The runners-up, the many runners-up. Joe Root as a youngster made 180 at Lords. I saw Michael Clarke get 230 against South Africa at Adelaide and 329 against India. I've seen Kevin Peterson, didn't enjoy either of these really, but I've seen Kevin Peterson make 226 against against the West Indies, and 227 against Australia. I saw Michael Vaughan back up 145 at the MCG in 2002, and then the following test in the new year 2003, 183 against Australia. I saw Mike Hussey's splendid 122 against South Africa at the MCG in his first season of Test cricket in 2005. I saw the Hayden-Simons partnership at the MCG in 2006 against England. They got 153 and 156 respectively. I saw the aforementioned Kepler Vessels, and you did too, make 173 against South Africa. Kepler Vessels from South Africa against the West Indies at Sydney in 1984-85. I think you were a 4-year-old. You didn't see much of the innings because you were too busy picking up papers off the SCG Hill. I saw Greg Chappell make 116 against Pakistan and 114 against England. And I've seen Sachin Tendulkar make 116 against Australia at the MCG in 1999. And Michael Slater's brilliant 123. How he didn't get into the top 10 against England at the SCG in January 1999. So these are my top 10. I'll skip over the first 5. Steve Smith's 141
Sorry, folks, we've run out of time because Dad's just mentioned all of those. So I'm glad you could join us this week. No, carry on. Top 10 then. Okay, top 10.
Yeah, I went to my top 10. Steve Smith is number 10. He got 141 not out against England at Brisbane in 2017. Probably the scratchiest innings he's ever played, but he got Australia into a first innings lead. He would refuse to get out, and then went on to set up the win. So Mohammed Yusuf, he was only 20 not out at stumps, but he made 202 at Lords in 2006. And I can remember him playing at the end of day 2, a cover drive off Matthew Hoggard that ended up at my feet and the boundary. Just a superb, glorious player to watch, Mohamed Yusuf. An innings you witnessed, Ben, at Edgbaston in 1997, not Hussein's 200. I think Graham Thorpe set up that win for England when he got his 138. Because if you remember, England were in a little bit of trouble. They were only chasing 118, but they were 3 for 50. And it was Thorpe who took the initiative and started hitting the boundaries first and really launched that partnership with Hussein. So I rated his innings a bit higher. And number 6 was Martin Crowe's 142 at Lords in 1994. When he had a bad knee, he was nearly finished. It was a gorgeous day at Lords, and it was Martin Crowe in all his glory, with this dodgy knee, grimacing as he sort of paddled the ball round from, I think Graham Gooch tried to bowl him a bouncer, paddled the ball round a fine leg. He was in a lot of pain, but he just batted beautifully, and like Williamson is now, he was the linchpin of the whole New Zealand side. So that was a special innings as well. So there's my runners-up that didn't get in the top 5. You might want to talk about your top 5 now before I come to my top 5, because that's a lot of me.
Mine, well, I'll start with the most... I haven't seen a lot of Test cricket in the last 6 years, living in the US, so I'm selecting from a much smaller pool than you are, Dad, but my top 5 goes something like this, and this, I haven't put a lot of thought into this, but the most recent Test century I saw was David Warner. Well, the complete century as well. It all happened in almost a couple of sessions at the MCG against England last Ashes series in Australia. He made, I think it was 103, but the innings was pretty special. It was a pretty quick 100 in classic Warner style, a massive Boxing Day crowd. The sun was out while he was batting. The game actually slowed down significantly after he got out, but the 100 was really memorable for the fact that he was sort of caught and bowled off Tom Curran, I think, for what was 99, and then upon review it showed that it was no ball, and then he brought up his 100 the next ball. It was just, the noise was phenomenal. It was the most exciting part of the day, and usually, third umpire intervention for no balls or can be kind of put a dampener on the game or slow things down. But this actually created some pretty special drama. So that one was a good one. And at the same MCG, Boxing Day, about 13 or 14 years earlier, Virender Sehwag made a blistering 195 in a day, or less than a day. He even got out on the same day, I believe, to Simon Kadich off a full toss. He made 195. I actually had to leave and go and work at a video store before I saw him get out, but he was just phenomenal at that innings. Can remember him hitting some straight sixes and just hit the ball anywhere at will. That was a high scoring game, but that was a scintillating innings. And you, obviously, Dad, I don't think any of these that I'm mentioning you weren't there for, so anything you want to add to, feel free.
Well, yeah, I saw both of those. I think Warner was about 83 at lunch, and certainly he gave the Test match a real flying start, but it did fizzle out. Of course, Alistair Cook stole the run-making honours by getting an unbeaten double century in the game, but it did fizzle out. Whereas the game you're talking about, that's where Sehwag got his 195, Australia won by 9 wickets. It was the last day result.
Moving on to my number 3, this is another one, a special innings. Stephen Waugh's 108 at Old Trafford in 1997 in the first innings. Of course, he made a century in the second innings, which I didn't see, but don't remember a lot of shots. It was just a classic innings of determination and grit, and basically, he wasn't captain yet, but he just really was leading the Australian batting right through that era, sort of from the sort of famous Jamaica innings onwards, really. And it was a spicy wicket. Australia were 4 for not many. I think they were 4 for maybe 50 when Michael Bevan got out fending a ball off his lip, as he tended to do. And Steve Waugh just again was just super determined not to get out, and sort of batted right down the innings. I think maybe Rifle managed to get some runs with him towards the end, but
good partnership with Rifle. They went off a bad light for a while. Some not controversy, but big question mark over whether Mark Taylor should have batted or bowled after winning the toss because the pitch was damp. Dean Headley in his Test debut for England did a bit of damage against the left-handers, including Bevan, who I think your reference to his
second innings.
Yeah, that was the second innings. I think it was just a straightforward caught behind in the first innings. Matthew Elliott given out caught behind when the ball hit his elbow. I remember some of the Steve Waugh shots though. His back foot offside shots and his clips off the pads through mid wicket and square leg. So it wasn't a strokeless wonder, certainly.
Yeah, well, and it. It's a very special in the context of the fact that he made 100 in each innings, and Australia were yet to put a win on the board in that series, and they didn't look back from there really. Number 2, this one is kind of a sentimental favourite, and it could have gone to either Mark Waugh or perhaps Alan Border, but in the same test in 92-93 against the West Indies at the MCG, against the excellent West Indies bowling attack, Patrick Patterson, Courtney Walsh, Curtly Ambrose, and maybe, I'm guessing Kenny Benjamin, I'm trying to remember. But, it might have been Ian Bishop, actually. Correct, it was Ian Bishop. Just really great memories of that test series, really, 92-93. It was just sensational Test cricket. The Brisbane Test prior to the Melbourne Test was really exciting, a really exciting drawn Test where Australia had, I think, the Windies 8 down, and then went on to Melbourne. And I remember going to Boxing Day, and there was a really big crowd, and the cricket was excellent. And Australia weren't dominating. The Windies were bowling well, and Mark Waugh played this kind of aggressive counter-attacking innings where he would back away and sort of hit the ball over the slips off short balls, which was a pretty weird shot at that time, not something you saw a lot of, very inventive. And he managed to score 112 and put on in a big partnership with Alan Border.
It set up the win that was claimed by Shane Warne, Tyro Shane Warne, on day 5 when he took 7 for 52.
Yeah, and I was probably just as excited to see Alan Border get 100. He was someone that I could remember from when I first even knew what cricket was. He'd always been there, and it would have been the fairy tale kind of almost series for him if Australia had managed to win that, and they probably should have won that series. And my number 1 is a double century. It's Brian Lara's 277. The following Test, which I was a very young lad, and I don't remember a lot of his innings, but it's obviously just a legendary coming of age kind of innings where he just played just his fluent strokes all around the ground against a good attack on what turned out to be a very flat wicket, but obviously a historic Test for Lara's big score, and it kind of set his career off. And also, I guess sentimentally, you interviewed him for the Ken Pieces Cricketer magazine, I think, Dad, at a hotel in Melbourne, probably the Hyatt or something, and took me along to that interview when I was only 10 or 11 years old. So meeting a Test cricketer at that young age was exciting, and he just sort of was starting out, and then to see him sort of just announce himself as a star batsman, it was pretty special.
Well, I certainly probably wouldn't have got the easy access to him once he played that innings in Sydney. The game was doomed to a draw. There were some rain interruptions as well, as often happens in Sydney. But the thing with Lara was you could be entertained even though there wasn't a heap hinging on the result, or there wasn't likely to get a result, he's such a joy to watch bat that there was still something to savour from the game. That he got 277, went on and on, really pummeled Shane Warne and Greg Matthews. But all the bowlers really, who, on a flat wicket just could not make any impression. Australia had made 500 as well. All right, my final five. This is it, folks. People have been hanging out for this, I know. They're going, what could it be? What could he go for? Okay, so here we go. The first, number 5, is a recent one. It's last year. It's Virat Kohli at Edgbaston against England, 149 in 2018. In a great cricket match that England eventually won by 20 runs. A modern master, Kohli, and really he had a shocking tour of England in 2014. Really had to assert himself. The rest of his side really struggled all last year in this series, and they eventually lost 4-1, 1-4. He also got dropped twice. It wrecked David Milland's Test career that he dropped Kohli twice. Nevertheless, this was a fantastic innings. I took myself over when I saw a cheap airfare late in the day. Went with my good friend Kevin Grant, and met other friends as well there. I just had a tremendous time, and this innings really topped it off. It was the innings of a master. He had a fantastic tour. I saw him get 97 at Trent Bridge as well. So that's number 5. Number 4 is Graham Gooch's 154 not out at Leeds in 1991. Again, we saw about half of that innings, didn't we, Ben? You were there, and again, as a lad, it's been rated the top innings of all time by those people who are able to sit down and gather together and heaps of data and stats. It was cold, the wicket was green and seaming around. Ambrose and Walsh and Marshall really knew how to bowl in those conditions. The next high score in that innings was 27, I think, and that set up England's win in the first test and set another great series, wasn't it? 2-2 it finished, 5-test series. So that was pretty special. Kim Hughes, 100 not out. We mentioned that last time with the moments because that was the Boxing Day that Dennis Lilly bowled Viv Richards on the last ball of the day. And we hear if you know anything about your cricket history, about Sam McCabe's great innings and counter-attacking against bodyline. This must have been the next closest thing to that. Able to take on the West Indian fast bowlers when Australia were in deep trouble and get an even 100 not out. Number 2 is also Steve Waugh, and this is again like yours, number 2, or one of yours, your Lara one, a romantic selection. This is at he's 152 not out at Lords in 1989. That was my first ever trip to England, my first trip to Lords. The sun shone. Australia had been down in the dumps in the mid-80s. They'd won at Leeds, and Waugh had got 177 not out. But this was the innings, I think, that really set up the start of the Australian era, because they picked off an early Ashes Test win in England in 81 and 85, and then went on to lose the series badly. This one sort of said, you know what, we actually are a better side than you this time. They'd been announced as the weakest side ever to leave Australia. And it was Steve Waugh coming of age. He'd been in the side for a few years, hadn't done much. Got the 100 at Leeds, and then this one. And just to be at Lords in the sunshine for the first time, it was heaven. And to see Australia dominate, they chased 286 and got 528 and went on to win by 6 wickets. So that was a great occasion. And the final one, a bit of a surprise, I think. It's Ricky Ponting's 143 not out against South Africa at the SCG in January 2006. I turned up with Chris on the last day, day 5. What are we going to do in Sydney today, dear? This game's going to be a draw. There's a bit of rain forecast. There'd been rain previously in Sydney again. Chris said, we might as well go to the cricket. So we went in. There were nobody in the ground at the start of play. We sat down in front of the O'Reilly stand on the fence, and Mike Hussey, we were chatting to Mike Hussey over the fence. I nearly introduced your mother to Mike Hussey. We're talking to him about why he was wearing footy boots. He said because the outfield's so wet. So that was kind of mood at the start of the day. Then Graham Smith set Australia 287 to win. and thought, there's no way known they could chase it down in about 60 or 70 overs. And Ponting played this flawless gem of an innings of 143 not out. He never gave a chance that I can recall. He had a good partnership with Matthew Hayden, who was himself a fine stroke player, but his innings moves to the background. Ponting's trademark pulls, his clips off his pads, cut shots, cover drives, everything, and they cantered to an easy win on the last day. I just set that aside. He made 100 in the first innings as well. He came back from the 2005 Ashes series really hungry and annoyed that the Ashes had been forfeited. He just got 100 every time he walked out to bat that summer. So I've seen Steve Waugh and Matthew Hayden and a few other guys make a few hundreds, but I think I've counted up that Ponting's made the most, and that's the most memorable one for me. A surprise number one, but really just a great innings.
Get it! Oh, Ricky Ponting. Ricky Ponting becomes the only player in history to score hundreds in each innings of his 100th Test match. This is an extraordinary achievement, and one that better still should lead to Australia winning a Test and a series.
Well, excellent top five, Dad. I think you pulled out a few surprises there, and I think you probably mentioned nearly every Test 100 that you've ever seen over the course of this episode, so that's an achievement as well.
No, there's plenty more, and next time maybe I can list every Test century I've ever seen, because they're in there, they're in my head somewhere.
Yeah, excellent stuff. All right, well we'll wrap it up then, and we should speak in a couple of weeks, and we might have some Test cricket closer on the horizon by that stage, and obviously the World Cup's coming up as well, and we'll get into previewing that when we get a little closer to it.
We'll look forward to that, Ben. Speak to you soon.
All right, Dad. Speak soon, and thanks everyone for listening. Bye bye.